fourth fight on the prelims at middleweight. Matt, this is a fight that we're really excited about. I know the first time we previewed all these fights for UFC 249 that was supposed to happen on April 18th. It was one that we covered in quite a bit of detail. But Matt, primetime Uriah Hall taking on Jacare Souza. And I'm going to start the clock here because you have a really different tale of two different disciplines. I mean, Uriah Hall, his kickboxing, his distance management, and his counter-striking. Those are really the triple threat for him on the feet. You want to go back even 3 fights ago because he's won his last 2. But the fight before that was a loss to Paulo Costa. And a lot of people thought that maybe he was overmatched. And at the time, Costa was really working his way up. I mean, had a really big win over big rig Johnny Hendricks at middleweight. But Uriah Hall did find a little bit of success in that fight. Now, after that, win over Bavon Lewis, and in his last one, a win over Antonio Carlos Jr., Shoeface, versus a guy in Jacare Souza that's actually lost his last 2 fights to Jack Hermanson. Then he moved up to light heavyweight to challenge Jan Blachowicz, who has a realistic title shot potential in that division. And it was a really odd fight. I mean,
that's a nice way of saying it was one of the more boring main events we've had in a very long time.
There were some stall tactics. There was a lot of pressuring up against the cage and not a whole lot of action. So Jacare moves back down to 185 pounds. I mean, this is a guy who was a former Strikeforce middleweight champion. Now he's coming in here in a fight against Uriah Hall, who's one of those guys that ever since he burst into the UFC off of The Ultimate Fighter, it's kind of like, when's it going to happen? I mean, he had that crazy win over Gegard Mousasi, and then Mousasi was able to take that back. And now we get a fight where, man, there's going to be a lot of questions for the loser of this fight.
And that's the perfect way to set this up, too. I am so concerned about Jacare in this fight. I think Jacare has looked old in his last 2 fights. And let me make something very clear. An old Jacare can still beat 99% of any division, no matter who he's fighting. But the names that you just said, Jack Hermanson should not be able to beat Jacare Souza. I know Jack Hermanson's a really good fighter. He's a really talented fighter. And I don't mean this with any disrespect to him, but you don't think of Jack Hermanson being the type of guy who's able to go out there and beat a guy like Jacare. It's just, Jacare at this point in his career, he doesn't have hand speed at all. He has very powerful shots, but you can see them coming. And with a counter striker like Uriah Hall, that's why it was a good thing that you brought that up. All he needs is a little tiny opening. And I went back and I watched the Chris Weidman fight in preparation for this. I know Chris Weidman and Uriah Hall, very, very different fighters, but all of Jacare's big strikes were these looping, really slow overhands. Now, yes, those are going to work if they hit. And against a guy like Chris Weidman, who I know, yes, he knocked out Uriah Hall way back in the day, and he's reached higher peaks than Uriah Hall has, but as a pure striker, is not even close between those two. So I think that if Jacare isn't able to get Uriah Hall out of there quickly, Uriah is just going to be able to slowly get his timing. We've seen it 1,000 times before. He might lose the first round, he might lose the second round, but there's going to be a point where Jacare gets tired because he's a little bit older, and cardio was an issue with him when he was 25. Now he's, 40 almost? So that's going to be a big problem. And if this were any other time than May 9th, 2020, I would probably say Jacare wins. It just feels like the stars are sort of aligned for Uriah Hall to finally go on that run that everyone's been hoping he would since he was the runner-up to the Ultimate Fighter.
I mean, listen, the odds makers and the fans are going to disagree with you from a traditional sense, because if you look at the odds, Jacare is just slightly favored at a minus 125 versus Uriah Hall. It's just about a plus 100 line, and over on Tapology, out of the voters, 631, 67% going with Jacare Souza, and actually 66% predicting a submission. Uriah Hall is a guy that in the UFC, we haven't really seen his submission defense being an issue.
Okay, but that's like saying in the NBA draft when there's a point guard and they're like, but he can't guard Russell Westbrook one-on-one. Well, no duh, because no one's ever grappled with Jacare until they do. That's the problem. He did do really good against Shoeface, though, and that's why I think that fight was so important. I really like to bring up that when you look at a title challenger, it's really important who they fought, and this is why I think Tony would do so well against Khabib. He fought Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee is kind of Khabib light, so if you can beat a guy like that, it sets you up really well. And that's what I like about Uriah Hall. He's kind of had back-to-back training camps for pretty much the same guy, and he did pretty well in his last one, and he's just going to keep on improving upon that. I think Uriah Hall's going to win, and by stoppage, too.
And we've seen guys like that beating Shoeface, like an Ian Heinisch, where it was like, what are we going to get next? And for Heinisch, I mean, it hasn't panned out, but for Uriah Hall, really wily vet that's been competing against some of the top guys in the UFC for some time. Like I mentioned, the Mousasi win and eventual loss, but still, really looking forward to this fight. Matt, you're going with Uriah Hall. I'll side with you. I'll go with Uriah Hall as well. I mean, the counter-striking is one of those things that you can never count out. And he had success against Paulo Costa. If you look on UFC stats, it doesn't count as a knockdown. He did actually bring him to his knee or both knees. So make sure you check out the rest of our videos for UFC 249. 2 minutes for the main card and prelims, 5 minutes for a co-main event and main event for the titles. So make sure you check those out. And as we always say, Matt, Fight Night Picks. Let's get into it.